because I know I am. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Rolf, and then we're going to play a video. And right after the video, he's going to come on up and chat with you a little bit about thanks from a grateful patient. That's the topic of his talk today. So Rolf Benirschke had an illustrious 10-year career as the place kicker for the San Diego Chargers. That's an American football team, for those of you who don't know. They used to actually live here and play here in San Diego, but they don't anymore. But that's a different story. Maybe Rolf will tell you a little more about that. Before retiring as the third most accurate kicker in NFL history, he received numerous awards, including the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, NFL Player Association Hero of the Year, and the NFL's most prestigious award, the Byron Whizzer White Award, and he also played in the Pro Bowl. In 1997, Rolf became the 20th player inducted in the Chargers Hall of Fame. During his second season, Rolf was struck with ulcerative colitis, an intestinal illness that required major abdominal surgery and nearly cost him his life. He returned to play for 7 more seasons and created Great Comebacks, an ostomy patient support program that provides support and inspiration for ostomy patients around the world. 20 years after his surgeries, he would discover that he had contracted the hepatitis C virus from blood transfusions that he had underwent 3 year-long treatments before. From blood transfusions. And so he then underwent 3 year-long treatments before finally getting rid of the virus. His experiences as a patient and having grown up with a world-renowned scientist and medical school professor as a father led him to co-found Legacy Health Strategies. We've done some work with Legacy Health Strategies here in San Diego. LHS is a healthcare solutions company that creates personalized patient support and engagement programs for medical device and pharmaceutical companies, where he's the chief patient officer. Rolf has authored 3 books, including his autobiography, Alive and Kicking, as well as Great Comebacks from Ostomy Surgery and Embracing Life. He also currently works with UCSD Health, helping to transform their culture and patient experience while speaking around the country on the importance of culture, connection, and the patient experience and the need for ongoing research and innovation. Devotion to philanthropy is a large part of Rolf's life. He supports numerous organizations, including the Zoological Society of San Diego, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, the San Diego Blood Bank, and is chairman of the Rolf Benirschke Legacy Foundation. Rolf currently lives in Del Mar with his wife, Mary, of 27 years, and has 4 children, Eric, Kari, Tim, and Ryan. So I'm going to cue the video, and then Rolf will be up in just 1 second. You're on.
Rolf Benirschke has an opportunity to kick the San Diego Chargers into the AFC Championship game. The snap, it's down, he hits it, it's up! It's no good! Benirschke, who feels, I'm sure, just broken about that play, hoping that he'll get another chance.
For most, missing a winning kick in one of the greatest games in NFL history would be a bitter disappointment. But for Rolf Benirschke, it was simply another step in a journey that began in 1978.
The second season of my career, I came down with what I thought was the flu. I had fever, I had abdominal crampiness. There were 3 or 4 other guys on the team that had it as well, but theirs went away and mine progressed. That season was one of the most statistically successful of my career, but there should have been a little footnote that said the young kicker was dying.
At the time, it was very difficult to grasp just how sick Rolf was getting. Oh, your stomach's upset. You'll be fine. What, you had too much to drink last night or a bad burger? We weren't ready for somebody to be that sick.
Benirschke was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a chronic digestive disorder in which the cause and cure are unknown. Rolf suffered in silence for over a year as treatments failed to control the disease.
On a flight home from New England, I collapsed on the plane, and my colon had perforated, and I needed surgery, and there were complications, and 6 days later I needed a second surgery. And I woke up weighing 123 pounds with 2 ostomy bags on my side, not sure if I'd see the next day, and frankly not sure if I really cared to.
Shortly after his release from the hospital, with his body frail and his spirit weakened, Rolf was invited to a game. When news of Benirschke's visit reached the Chargers' locker room, it was fitting that Louis Kelcher, a Bunyan-esque defensive lineman from Texas with a heart to match, convinced Coach Don Coryell to allow Rolf to be honorary captain.
Let's do this thing. Let's let the world know that we love him, that we're behind him,
I was worried that I couldn't walk from the sidelines to the middle of the field. And Louis said, if you can't walk, we'll just have to carry you. And as I walked out, the stadium spontaneously stood and applauded. I had no idea that they had been following me. And by the time I got to the middle of the field, I was just in tears.
Watching Big Louis holding hands with their little kicker. It's pretty neat.
All of a sudden, it was just a thrill to be alive. That profoundly changed my recovery. And it would give me encouragement to keep trying.
With support from fans, family, and friends, Benirschke returned to the Chargers in 1980. A year later, Rolf's courage would be tested again in one of the greatest games ever played.
In many ways, that game was like a metaphor for my life. When it really didn't look like I was going to live, I was spared and given a second chance. In this game, a kicker misses a kick in overtime, they never get a second chance.
The 29-yard field goal try to win it. The snap. It is down. It is up. It is good.
Remarkably, I was given a second chance and was lucky to make it. That made me realize the same opportunity exists in life. The question then becomes, how are you going to use it?
I go back to Rolf always preaching, it's the journey, not the destination. I'm thinking, who would put somebody in a situation like this to experience this journey? Why? Maybe that was all part of the master plan.
I heard somebody say once that wisdom is a tough teacher. She always gives the exam first and teaches the lessons later. And once you hang in there, then the lessons come out.
He's had that opportunity, and he's made the most to share as much of him as he can. And, well, that's what you hope to do in life. And he's done it.
Ladies and gentlemen, professional athlete, patient advocate, healthcare executive, father, husband, and good friend of mine, Rolf Benirschke.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to be here. It's a little hard to watch that video, though, every time. I keep missing that kick. I keep wishing it would go through the first time. It would have saved a lot of pain and agony. It was a long walk to the sidelines, I can assure you. But I am grateful. I'm here as a grateful patient, and I want you to just spend the next half hour or so just listening and hopefully thinking about your life and perhaps your opportunity here at Qualcomm. And hopefully some of the things I say will resonate with you personally and professionally. Rick shared that he's a good friend of mine. I wouldn't say that he would be particularly a good friend if he put me the last speaker before the bus on the way to the drinks. If you fall asleep, I forgive you, but I hope that you won't. It actually reminds me of a funny story. When I was a rookie in the National Football League, I come from college, and college is very, collegial and rah-rah. And I remember a game that we were absolutely getting crushed on. We were down by 3 touchdowns. Our quarterback, Dan Fouts, some of you might remember, who's now a Hall of Famer, was having a nightmare. He'd thrown 3 interceptions. We're down by 3 touchdowns. The game is mercifully coming to an end. But the 2-minute warning timeout happened. So for those of you that know football, at the very end of the game, there's a 2-minute warning. Time is stopped. They go to commercial. Players come to the sidelines. And our coach came to the sidelines and walked up to our coach, who has just witnessed him throwing 3 interceptions. We're down by 3 touchdowns. And he's seen enough. So he goes, "Fouts, you're out." And he took Fouts out of the game. And he looked down the bench to see who the backup quarterback was, and it was a guy named Bobby Douglas, who was never a great quarterback, but he had a great sense of humor. So coach goes, "Douglas, you're in." So Bobby Douglas starts walking to the huddle. There are 2 minutes left in the game. We're down by 3 touchdowns. He gets halfway there, turns around, and walks back to the coach, and with an absolutely straight face says, "Coach, do you want me to win it or just tie it up?" That took some courage. Sure, we didn't do that in college. But it's a privilege to be here. You guys are a special group. I've been hearing about you from Rick. I've watched your company for the last many years grow. But what you all do as global sales and service, run this company. You drive it. You're responsible for whether it's successful or not. You have an enormous job. I'm sure there are days you go, what the heck am I doing? What I'd like to share with you as you leave here and go back to your respective countries, your respective places of work, some things that I've learned from my illness, from being on some amazing teams, that I think might be applicable to what you do. So first, let me say I'm a kicker. I was a kicker. I'm hardly a football player, right? So I'm already out on, a little bit on the side. So when I was diagnosed with my illness, I was one of those guys that didn't really want to tell a lot of people, because there's 100 kickers in line who are healthy, and it would have been very easy to replace me. And so I kept my head down, and I continued to play sick that season. By the end of the season, I was playing the game on Sunday. Sunday night, they'd take me to a hospital. They'd put a central IV line in my neck. I'd spend the week being fed only through my IV. They would take it out Saturday night. I'd go spend the night with the team. We'd have a team meeting, play the game on Sunday night. They'd put me back in the hospital, and they'd put another IV line in my neck. So for a month, I didn't eat. But we kept winning, and I actually kept playing. If you look at the 10 years that I would play, statistically, that was one of the best years of my career. But there should have been a footnote that said this kicker was dying. That off season, I tried every conceivable therapy to try to get better, convinced myself that I was, came back and tried to play the third season, and collapsed on a team plane. They took me to a hospital. I had emergency surgery. 6 days later, second surgery. And I woke up from that surgery 65 pounds below my playing weight in the same hospital where my dad was working, and his colleagues telling him, I'm not sure Rolf's going to survive the night. I woke up, I had 2 ostomy bags on my side, and over the next 6 days, the anastomosis line where they sewed the ends of my intestine together broke down, and I became septic. Some of you understand medicine. I started to spike 105 fevers. We couldn't figure out what it was. The nurse came in one day. I was sprawled out on the floor, unconscious. They called a code, and they did an emergency surgery. And I remember having this near-death experience that night, and speaking to physicians later, they go, you had no reason to live. I was septic. My organs were shutting down. I was at death's door. And I think the reason I lived is I think the Lord stepped in and gave me a reprieve, and then I got extraordinary care. I would spend 5.5 weeks in the intensive care unit. Every day was a battle trying to stay ahead of the infection. And ultimately released to the care of my parents, looking around going, what just happened? Why didn't I die? From my perspective, looking up at those ceiling tiles in the hospital, there was nothing in my life that was worth living for. I loved athletics. I was a skier and a tennis player and a hockey player. In San Diego here, I'd love to body surf and scuba dive. And I'm thinking, I'll never do that. I've got bags on my side. I'm making a living as a professional athlete. I'm going, I'm certainly never doing that again. Nobody's ever played in the NFL with an ostomy. And I'm 24, and I like girls. And I'm thinking, I'm not doing that again either. Why didn't I just die? Sometimes, I guess, thank goodness for unanswered prayers. I lived, and then had to figure out what to do with my life. In a very depressed state, I'm sure clinically depressed, but just overwhelmed by where I found myself. I found several books written by POWs that changed my life. These are guys that spent 7 years in Vietnam, in the Hanoi Hiltons of the world, where they were brutalized, tortured, fed propaganda, denied food, health care. They'd lose 100 pounds, many of them. And somehow they survived 7 years. One of the books was entitled Beyond Survival. It wasn't just enough to survive. He writes about it. We had to come out of that experience changed. And as I'm reading this, I'm going, oh my gosh, how can you, I'm still angry. I'm still asking, why is this happening to me? I'm 24, our team's good, I've been healthy. I'm having some success, and all of a sudden it's taken away from me. This isn't fair. I stayed in the why me place forever. Why is this happening? Poor me, isn't it? First of all, nobody cares. Doesn't do you any good. So I got inspired by reading these books, and they did some things that I began to apply to my life. 7 years I spent there, but they talked about breaking time down into bite-sized increments. The question for them became, how do I survive the day? I know I'm going to get beaten. I might have a hard time getting food. I'm isolated from but how do I get through the day? I can't worry about tomorrow. And a week from now seems so far away, I can't think that way. So all right, I'm going to figure out, how do I get through the day? So my day literally was, my dad had tied a rope to the bottom of my bed because I couldn't lift myself. I'd pull myself up with my arms, I'd lever my legs over the side, and I'd stand up. And every day, I made the decision to walk to the mailbox and back. And the second day, I would walk 2 mailboxes, and then 3 mailboxes, and then 4 mailboxes. So those of you that live in California, that's not a big accomplishment to walk 4 mailboxes. If you sneeze now, 4 houses down, they say, God bless you. It's very close. But I did the second thing they talked about, which was to set small, achievable goals. So if you think about some of the challenges in front of you, how do you get through that? You break time down. I can't worry about a month from now. I got to figure out what I got to do today. You set small, achievable goals. And then the third thing they talked about doing, which was incredibly difficult for military guys who are alpha males, by design, by selection, if you will, much like athletes. We don't rely on other people. We learn to do it ourselves. When I look in this audience, this is an incredibly bright audience. You probably are used to doing things on your own. And when people around you that you need are slow, it's frustrating. It's, come on, guys. They had to learn to lean on each other. A certain system of order was developed in these POW camps. The highest ranking officer found himself in charge of all the men. So if they heard that Eric in cell block D was struggling, he was giving up, he had dysentery, he just wasn't going to do it anymore, the word went around to everybody, Eric's struggling. And so they would walk by his cell and they'd cough in code. They'd tap on they'd leave notes that he would find. Hang in there. God bless you. They're not going to beat us. We're with you. And slowly they realized the power of leaning on each other. In the process of that, they came out changed. They discovered in their lives something that I had to discover in my life, that perhaps you have already in your life. And that is that we have an indomitable spirit. I believe God's gifted it to us, but most of us, it lies latent. It's dormant. If you think about our lives, most of the time we're driving through the guardrails of life. We may hit a bump. We may bounce off the side, but our lives have been pretty good. It's not until you crash into the ditch where you're looking around going, what just happened? I'm talking about the premature loss of a child, a bad divorce, a bankruptcy, in my case, an illness, where you're looking around going, is it even worth fighting to live for? In the process, those guys discovered that they have greater courage, a greater ability to cope, greater creativity than they ever thought they had. And they came out changed. That group of people that were POWs came back to this country, and they became presidents and CEOs, leaders in every way. They looked at life differently. I will tell you, standing in front of you, I am the luckiest guy in the world. Now, I've endured 4 major abdominal surgeries. I ended up getting hepatitis C from the blood transfusions. And in the early days of the virus, the treatment was a daily injection of interferon, where you were sick for a year. And I had a wife and 4 kids, under 6, 3 with special needs. I would come home and I would tell my wife, who was frazzled, ready to hand me the kids, and honey, I can't do this. I got to take a nap. I'm so sorry. 3 different years of that. And I'm still married, which is amazing. I have an extraordinary wife, and I'm cured. I'm cured. The thing about hepatitis C, which relates to what you all do, is 25 years ago, we just identified the virus. Today, 25 years later, we have an all 100% curative therapy with an all-oral pill with no side effects. It's innovation and research. It's what you do. The challenge, though, when you innovate is that you are a leader and you take arrows and you've got to convince an unwilling organization that's out there that your products and services are valuable. When I returned to play, there was one seminal moment that I want to share with you that perhaps you can relate to. Nobody had ever played with ostomy bags. I went to the owner of our team and asked, will you allow me to compete for my job? I understand there's 100 people here, all healthy, that would love this job. There was a city that had fallen in love with our team back then. In the late 70s and early 80s, the Chargers were the thing here in San Diego. They loved the Chargers. We were exciting. We threw the ball all over. We scored. We were on Monday Night Football. And I got to be a big part of that. As a kicker, I was on the field a lot. And so when I got sick, as a member of the church, there was this extraordinary outpouring of support from me. I received thousands of letters and flowers and prayers and good wishes. But the team needed a kicker they could count on. So I actually called a meeting with the owner and said, would you just allow me to compete for my job? No special dispensation. And to my surprise, a good leader said, if you can prove to the medical community that you can protect yourself, our team doctors will let you compete. So worked fervently with the docs, figured it out, and was given a chance to compete for my job. And the seminal moment is this. There are 4 preseason games before the NFL season. After the 4th one, they make a decision about whether you make the team or not. In the 3rd preseason game, we had the ball. We threw an incomplete pass. It was going to be a 55-yard field goal, so our coach, Don Coryell, said, punt team. And he turned and he started to walk away. Well, I'm standing next to the special teams coach, the guy who had seen me work my tail off, fight to try to get back. And he looked at me and goes, can you make this kick? And I said, I can make this kick. So he goes, field goal team. And the next thing you know, the field goal team, we're running out there to kick a 55-yard field goal, which is the longest kick in my career. We get halfway out there, and we hear Coach Coryell saying, I said punt team. And it was too late. The field goal team was already out there. And we made the kick. And it was the longest kick of my career. I tell you that story because I probably wouldn't have been able to return to the league had it not been for my owner, who had a belief in me, and my special teams coach, who had a belief in me and gave me an opportunity. I likely would not be standing here as a returned football player that had a chance to play 7 more years, win 4 divisional championships, play on extraordinary teams. You have leaders like that. I know Rick, when he talks about you, his eyes light up. He brags about you, your background, your passion, your net promoter score, the way you drive things. And there's nothing more powerful than when your leader believes in you. But there is a responsibility you all have, and that's where I'd like to go right now. We had a team that got good. We were really good. But we had a player that twice held out, once got a renegotiated contract, but the second time the owner said, you know what? I can't be held up like this. And he traded this very popular player to Green Bay. And we were upset. We were upset at management. They don't understand how valuable JJ was to us. And we were preseason picks to go to the Super Bowl that year. So we started the year, and we find ourselves 4-5. We can't go to dinner without people coming and goes, what's going on with you guys? I thought you guys were supposed to be good. You're a bunch of bums. Every day in the paper, this is where it's different from your job, every day in the paper they write about us and how bad we are and how we can't. It got bad. We played a game on Monday Night Football where we knew the other team was going to run a fake field goal and we had to stop it, and everybody knew it except one guy missed his assignment. And they ran a fake field goal and they won the game on national television, Monday Night Football. We are embarrassed. We came back and the papers absolutely ripped us. So we did something that I'll never forget. We called a team meeting. We kicked the coaches out, and it was just us. It's Rick's gone, your leadership, it's just us. Hey guys, there's nobody coming in this door that's going to save us. The paper's going to keep writing about us. The fans are going to keep jumping on us. The only way we're going to get out of this hole is right here. Now, we're a really good team. What's going on? And we had guys stand up and share stuff they've never shared. One of the guys stood up. He was a guy named Wes Chandler, a really talented receiver that had come via this trade. So we had traded John Jefferson, this extraordinary player that was loved by all of us. But in the process, we get back this guy named Wes Chandler, who'd been an all-pro, really good player. And Wes stands up and he goes, I don't know why you guys hate me. I didn't do anything to you. I didn't trade JJ. I'm sorry he's here. He's not here. But if you just give me a chance, I'm a pretty good receiver. I'm pretty good. Throw me the ball. Treat me like a human being. I can help this team. And we had other guys stand up that shared very personal stuff. We went up the next week and we played against the Oakland Raiders. And we beat them by 4 touchdowns. And our world changed. We went on to win 6 of the next 7 and play in one of the great games of all time. The idea that I'm talking about is way different from what we think of when we think of successful teams. We think of successful teams and we talk about, do you have the right team leader? Are the right goals set? Do we have the right players on the team? Do we have the right strategy? Yes, we need to review and evaluate each other. All that's important. But I want to talk to you about something that you guys do every day in your jobs, but I'm going to suggest that maybe you don't do as well internally. You talk about building a connected world, connected patients, physicians, EMRs, systems. It's what you do for a living. What about you as a team? There are teams that have extraordinary talent that don't win. And there's some teams that have mediocre or marginal talent and win. Can you imagine if you have extraordinary talent? And Rick talks about your extraordinary talent in this room. If you had the same kind of passion and connectivity, what you could do together. I know that you have been changing. There was an acquisition. You have some legacy guys here that have been here from the beginning that know the ropes. You have some new guys, superstars that have come in. How do you meld this? In our world, in athletics, it was done every year. We had new people come in every year. Our average career length was, how long do you think? What do you think the average career length of a football player is? 7 years? It's 3.1. 3.1 years. 3.1. Imagine sitting next to every 3.1 years, there's 3 new guys next to you. How do you integrate that? How do you connect? So this is an interesting thought. Would you agree that we live in the most connected time in history? Would you also suggest that we might be the most disconnected we've ever been? If you think about our kids, right? They talk in terms of 120-syllable characters. They don't even look at you anymore. They're just... So how can we, in this incredibly connected world, be so disconnected? It's something I want you to ponder. Think about where we are in healthcare. Healthcare is in this extraordinary state of flux. It's been there for a while, right? Obamacare is changing. You know, we've gone from triple aim to outcomes. Patient satisfaction is important. Retention is important. We're not going to pay if you are back in the hospital within 30 days. But we also have all of this new stuff coming. We have personalized medicine, genomics. We live in the genomics capital of the world right here. It is right here. Just like Qualcomm drove mobile technology, genomic technology is happening right here. Wearables. You guys are right in the middle of that. Immunotherapy, CAR T, new technology. You guys are going to change the world, the way you connect, the healthcare world, the way you connect all of us. We are on the cusp of these treatments that are unbelievable. And yet, why do patients feel invisible, unheard, not valued, given a funny uniform, a case number, treated like differentiated by a disease or a condition? We're sort of like criminals, right? You put them in a jail, give them a number, a funny uniform, call them by their number. How do we change that? I do a lot of work, you do a lot, with the pharma industry. The pharma industry ought to be the most revered industry that we have. We're extending human life. We're making life better. We're curing disease. And yet there are a few bad actors that create these salacious headlines that ruin the whole industry. Every company is painted with the same brush. The NPS of the pharma industry is horrible. When you do actual surveys, they talk about the recognition of pharma, the association is up there with ISIS beheadings. They talk about it's all about profits, not about patients. If you really knew pharma company, for every $100 they made, 40 goes into the channel of distribution, and more than 30 cents goes back into R&D. And it takes 12 years to get a drug approved, and $2 billion. And they're changing the world. But they're made to be bad actors. How do you change that? You guys have an extraordinary opportunity with your connecting technology to take this whole new world of intelligent care to the level that we patients are begging for. Now, I know there are challenges. I know you're selling into headwinds. I know it's changing. I know that you have come up with solutions that the market is slow to accept. I know it's frustrating. I know you wish you could shake them and say, here's what we can do for you. Why can't you listen? We're in the same place. We want to treat patients differently. Our company is all about patient engagement. What are patients looking for? They want to connect with somebody. They want somebody to empathetically hear. They want to be treated differently from each other because we're all individuals. We can do it with Amazon and we can do it with all these other organizations we deal with. Why can't you treat me like that? It's difficult when doctors who have spent their lives pouring into patients find that they can't connect with patients. They have to make sure that they cover their rear ends and have everything documented in the EMR. And so when they talk to a patient, as they look over their head from talking to a computer, do you realize 31% of physicians don't stay in the practice of medicine by the time they're 50? There are 400 physicians killing themselves every year because of burnout. You guys get to be the savior for this group of people who are desperate to return to treating patients. How do you overcome this? I believe it's through connection. We have just witnessed an amazing World Series. Some of you that are not from here, bear with me, but we just watched the most amazing baseball World Series championships that we've ever seen. It was two heavyweights. It was the Los Angeles Dodgers against the Houston Astros. Extraordinary talent, duking it out, winning, losing, winning, coming back. And in the process, one team won. Now, I didn't have a horse in the race. I didn't really care if it was the Dodgers or Houston. I had actually friends on both sides. So I watched with this sort of unbiased perspective as these teams dealt body blows to each other. And the team that won was the Houston Astros. And you can argue they were the less talented team. The other team had this extraordinary bankroll, $240 million player salaries, against this upstart team that 3 years ago had 100 losses. And this team won. Why do you think? Here's why I think. I think they were able to answer 4 questions that I want to leave you to ponder. If you think about your own company and what drives success, think about this. 4 questions. It's the same 4 questions every patient asks its doctor. It's the same 4 questions every player asks their coach. Or I could argue their coach asks their player. And here's the first question. Can I trust you? Can I trust what you're telling me? If you look around the room and you think about your boss and how they relate to you, if you can't trust what he's saying, you don't have a basis for a relationship. Can I trust you? I had the privilege of playing golf a couple of weeks ago with a blind golfer. Now, it would have been hard to go home and tell my wife, yeah, I lost to a blind golfer.
So you lied to her?
So I lied to her. So here's how a blind golfer works. You talk about trust. This guy is blind. So he has peripheral vision. He's got no central vision. So he puts the ball on the ground, and then you stand behind him, and you position him And as you position him, then you stand there and you put your club out like this so he lines up, and then you position him. And then you say, all right, Jeremy, a little more left, and he turns a little more left, and he goes, okay. And then you step away, and he rips it. And when you get on the putting green, if that's the hole, you get behind him and you line him up, and here's what it is, and a little right, and he kind of walks the break, and he feels it, and then you putt it. And the guy was unbelievable. He shot 84. Yeah. Yeah. The point is he has had to develop absolute trust in his coach. Now, when I was down a couple of holes, I misaimed him so that, I couldn't go into my wife and say, yeah, can I trust you? We got to figure out how to trust each other. Here's the definition of trust equals the ability to connect rapport plus reputation plus reliability. Do you do what you say you can do? Over a very important denominator. And that denominator is self-interest. So if you think about it, if you get a 10 in rapport, a 10 in reputation, and a 10 in reliability, but you have a 10 in self-interest, it's all about you don't have a very good trust score. So think about the people you sell into. If it's all about you, they see it. We smell it. They know. We know. We have a sixth sense. If it's truly about what your mission is, which is to change the healthcare world through this extraordinary connective capability you're developing, that also gets fed and understood, and people change. So can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? This is the second question. Are you committed to learning this? In this case, flying from around the world to come here for 4 days of training to learn what's out there, how to do it better. The next question, and this is a hard one, is do you really care about me as a person? Think about your team. Do you know your teammates? I mean, really know them. Had a really in-depth, where you've been allowed to be vulnerable and listened. Let me tell you a story. I told you about those POW books that I read. One of the books I read was called I'm No Hero by a fighter pilot named Charlie Plumb. He was a hero in every sense of the word. He had flown 76 missions off the Midway. He'd had more shoot-downs, more kills. He was decorated, celebrated. And then one time he was shot down. And the parachute deployed and he landed in a rice paddy, and the Viet Cong caught him, and he spent 5 years and 3 months in prisoner of war camps. So when he was released and came back, he started to speak. And he tells a story one day of finishing a talk and going to the restaurant in the hotel with his wife. And as he's sitting there, he notices this guy 3 tables over that keeps looking at him. Keeps looking at him. Finally, the guy comes over and he goes, I know you. Aren't you Charlie Plumb? Charlie Plumb goes, yeah, I'm Charlie Plumb. He goes, you were a fighter pilot, right? Yeah, I flew 76 missions. Shot down a lot of people. But you were shot down, right? He goes, yeah, I was shot down, parachuted, and landed in the rice paddy. I spent 5 years. But the parachute worked, right? He goes, yeah, the parachute worked, but I landed in this rice paddy, and they jumped on me, and I spent 5 years off. But the parachute worked, right? He goes, yeah. Why? Oh, I was your parachute packer. Nice to meet you. And he leaves. And Charlie tells the story of stopping and dropping to his knees and goes, oh my gosh. How many times did I walk on the deck of that carrier as the man? I had my helmet, my uniform, and I walked out to the plane, and everybody's saluting me as I walk by. Oh, man, it's Charlie Plumb, it's Charlie Plumb, it's Charlie. Never once thinking about who put air in the tires, bullets in my gun, bombs on my wings. Certainly never thinking about the guy 3 holes down in the bowels of the boat packing my parachute. And he vowed that day never to forget the people that packed his parachute. So the question to you is, who packs your parachute? Do we value them? Or are we just, because we're senior, we're fighter pilots. We do the sail. What about the one that supports you? What about your EA? What about the one that makes the travel arrangements? When you stop and think about that, it'll humble you. It'll embarrass you. How many times have I treated someone that deserves worth and self-respect? I was reading a story a little while ago. The CEO of Schwab was telling a story. He was in business school, and pretty smart guy, Charles Schwab, CEO now, he's going to get a perfect grade in his whole master's education. It comes to the last class, the last test. He studied like crazy. He knows it. And he walks into the test, and the teacher gives him, everybody, one question. For 40% of the grade, one question. Here was the question. We've been meeting in this room for 2 years. You've walked by the cleaning lady 100 times. What's her name? For 40% of the test. He goes, I knew I didn't know the answer. Her name was Dorothy. I got a B in the class, the only B in my grade. And I vowed, I'm going to remember Dorothy's. Think about it. It's important. I carry a coin for a man that changed my life. I was a reluctant athlete. My dad was a medical school teacher when I was offered a scholarship to kick footballs at USC and Stanford and Cal and these really good schools. I went to my dad and goes, Dad, what do you think? Should I? He goes, why would you do that? Why would you do that? And I go, yeah, you're right. I had an interest in wildlife. I was a conservation guy, endangered species guy. And so I chose UC Davis in Northern California. It's got a vet school. My plan was to study zoology and go to vet school. And so I went there. I didn't sign up to play football. Well, I'm there for a week, and I get a call from the head football coach. He goes, are you Rolf Benirschke? I go, yeah, who are you? He goes, I'm the head football coach. I go, why are you calling? He goes, well, I just got berated on the phone by the head coach at USC, suggesting we're paying players to come to Davis. And when I explained to him, well, we don't even have scholarships. Our tuition is $212 a quarter. Of course we're not, but why are you accusing me of that? And the coach at SC goes, well, we recruited this kicker really hard, and he chose Davis over Southern Cal. You got to be doing something illegal. And the Davis coach goes, well, we didn't even sign a kicker, but what's his name? And he tracked me down, and he talked me into playing football. And he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he changed my life. He changed my life. But it wasn't just me. He changed the life of every person on that team because of what he taught us. He goes, every team we play is going to be bigger than us, stronger than us, faster than us. The only way we're going to win is if we care about each other more than the others. We're going to build something he called Aggie Pride. We were the UC Davis Aggies. Aggie Pride, built on trust, unity, and togetherness. We got to care about each other more than everybody else. He passed away last year, and I had a chance to speak at his memorial. And we had an event the night before. There were 500 players showed up. And when you started going around, why did you go to Davis? Tell me your story. And they would tell the story of Soker. I was a senior in high school. My dad was killed in Vietnam. I was an angry guy. I ended up at Davis, and Coach Soker was like a father that I just lost. And everybody had their story. Trust, unity, and togetherness. Jim Soker. Do you care about each other? If you don't care about each other, you're going to be a good team with great players and never reach the potential. And you'll never have an opportunity to answer the next question. Is there hope? Is there hope? Every patient wants to know from their physician, is there hope? Every player wants to know from their coach, do we have a chance? Is there hope in your business? You guys are in an interesting place right now. Broadcom wants to buy you. You read all that stuff. The world you're working in is not ready for you yet. But we are as patients. We need you. But it's an uphill slog. Is there hope? Is it worth it? If you can't answer that with each other and encourage one another that you need to stay the fight, you're going to have a hard time. If you watch the World Series, multiple times teams are down by 3 and 4 runs. with an inning to go. And they would tie it up because they believed that there was hope and there was a reason to fight. There's an amazing story that talks about hope. At the end of World War I, there was a submarine coming back to the Chesapeake Bay, and as it surfaced, it was actually hit by an ocean liner and punctured the hull of the submarine. And so the captain of the submarine lets out a mayday, and the Coast Guard hears it and responds, and as quickly as possible gets to the submarine. But by the time it gets to the submarine, it had fallen to the bottom of the channel. And so the Coast Guard deploys divers, and they dive down there. And as they get to the hull of the ship, they hear this pounding from the inside. This industrious sailor is pounding away and goes, and they recognize it's Morse code. And when they interpret the Morse code, the question the sailor's pounding is there hope? Is there hope? And the divers got to say, yes, there's hope. We're here. There's hope. We patients are desperate. Is there hope? Your doctors out there are desperate. Is there hope that we can change this broken system? We need somebody to come alongside. I heard somebody say that we can live 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 minutes without air. But we cannot live a second without hope. But with hope, we can live and do anything. Those POWs had hope that one day it would end. And they cared about each other, and they believed about each other. If you have passion, and the reason I'm standing in front of you when Rick asked me to talk is I'm here as a grateful patient. I am the beneficiary of research and innovation, and I know there's so much more to come. We are on the cusp of it. You guys are in the middle of it. I want you to leave understanding why you're here. I believe the Astros won because they were playing for something bigger than themselves. It wasn't just their stats. It wasn't just who was going to get MVP. Their city had been decimated by Hurricane Harvey. They were playing for a city that desperately needed some joy, something to look up for. I'm going to end with one story that talks about playing for something bigger than yourself. Some of you have heard of Bear Bryant. Bear Bryant, for those of you that don't know, was one of the iconic football coaches at the University of Alabama. Roll Tide. Roll Tide. An extraordinary coach, but an extraordinary man. He tells the story of a player he had named Henry Peterson. Henry Peterson was a fourth-string running back. He'd never played in a game as a running back in the 4 years of his time at Alabama. He'd always been a special teams guy. In practice, he was always the dummy running back. But Coach Bryant tells the story of his senior year getting a call from Henry Peterson. Henry calls up on a Monday and says, Coach, I'm going to have to miss the game on Saturday because my father just passed away. And Coach Bryant said, of course, Henry, please go be with your mom and your sisters. Take care of all that. Don't worry about us. As he hangs the phone up, he's thinking to himself, and Henry, we're not going to miss you. Did you see who we're playing this week? Alabama was going to play Auburn that week, one of their biggest rivals, right? The Alabama-Auburn, huge game. By the way, Henry, you're fourth string. We're not going to miss you. On Friday, the phone rings again. It's Henry Peterson calling Coach. Henry, what are you doing? Well, Coach, I got to thinking, I can't let my team down. I'm going to be there tomorrow for the game. Coach is going, Henry, it's the Auburn game. Are you sure? Coach, we got the funeral. Everything's squared. I can't let my team down. I'll be there. So Henry shows up the day of the game. And just before the game, he walks up to Coach Bryant and says, Coach, you have to start me today. Coach Bryant's looking around and going, Henry, this is the Auburn game. You've been here 4 years. You've never even played as a running back. I can't start you. Coach Bryant tells the story of Henry looking at me and I says, Coach, you have to start me today. You have to. And Coach Bryant says, I don't know what came over me, but I found myself saying, okay, Henry, I'm going to start you. But the minute you make a mistake, you're out of the game. You got it? Yes, Coach. Henry goes in, and in the first half, runs for 3 touchdowns. And he almost single-handedly beats Auburn that day. Now, at halftime, a very confused Coach Bryant comes in the locker room looking for Henry, and he finds Henry and goes, "Henry, I don't know whether to kiss you or kill you. 4 years you've sat on my bench. I never knew you could play like that." And Henry says, "Well, Coach, have you ever seen me walking arm in arm with an elderly gentleman around the campus at Alabama?" Coach goes, "I don't know, Henry. Why?" He goes, "Well, if you had, you would have seen me with my father, explaining to my dad what life was like here on the campus of Alabama. Because you see, my father was blind. Today, my father's in heaven and had a chance to see me play football for the very first time." What I take away from that story is Henry is no different a football player on this particular Saturday than he had been the previous 4 years. But he had a very different reason to play. So I don't know what your reason for being at Qualcomm Life is, why you've traveled thousands of miles to be here. I know what Rick's is, and I know what some of the leadership is. It's to change healthcare. It's to make it better. It's to innovate. It's to take your world-class technology, where you are the leaders, and do it for people like me. And I would suggest for people like you, because you have brothers, and you have sisters, and you have parents, and they will be patients one day. And so for all of them, I want to encourage you to keep up the battle. Keep fighting the fight. Do the right thing. You know what it is. And lastly, care about one another. Get to know each other. Find out your stories, why you're here. And in the process, you will overcome this and make a difference that we're all in this for. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you very much.
We take questions?
Yes, please.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. If you can sit down, please sit down. No, sit down. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please sit down. Please sit down.
How powerful was that? Wow. Go ahead, have a seat. So the one designation that I deliberately left off was he's a philanthropist as well and runs his own foundation, the Rolf Benirschke Legacy Foundation. It was on the bio, but I wanted to point it out. He was gracious enough to volunteer his time to inspire all of us this way. I'm going to personally make a donation of $2,500 to the foundation, and I'm going to give all of you an opportunity to donate as well. And if you do donate, I'll match your donations as well. So we'll make sure we make a good donation to the foundation. So thank you. And if you have any questions, a few more minutes before we go get our drink on, all right?
Yeah, don't want to keep you from your drinks. But if you have any questions, I'd love to see if I can.
Any sports questions are fine. Healthcare, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Could you repeat your definition of trust?
So trust is think of it as an equation. It's rapport, the ability to connect, which is really important for those of us that sell or in that. So rapport plus reputation plus reliability. Do you actually do what you say you're going to do over this powerful denominator of self-interest? So think about that. We all know when we're being sold, and we all know when somebody's genuinely interested in us. I sort of think of the caveman days. I think about cavemen. Cavemen had two needs, right? They had to eat, and they had to not be eaten, right? So every 15 seconds, the caveman is looking to see where the saber-toothed tiger is, right? Well, we have that same gene. We know intuitively if somebody's trying to sell us something or partner with us and make it better. And it's subtle, it's intuition, it's gut feeling, whatever it is. It's self-interest. And when we take ourselves out of it and we do what we are designed to do, the mission of your company, if you remember, it's to change healthcare, to be the leader. Those of you that don't know the history of Qualcomm changed this community. It didn't just change, mobile technology. It changed this community because of the vision of a couple of leaders that were willing to endure really awkward times. I've heard some of the early stories when you were one step from bankruptcy, one step from not getting a job. I mean, they're amazing stories. And you persevered. And look what happened. Now we take it for granted. It didn't just happen. It takes leadership like you have to believe in what you're doing, knowing it's the right thing. You're just ahead of the curve right now. Our healthcare system is broken in so many ways. There's so many misaligned incentives that we have to break down. It's about outcomes. It's about outcomes. It's not about product. Product's important. It's the tool. It's about outcomes. If we keep that in mind, you will win. Yeah, other questions? I know the drinks are waiting. All right. All right, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, thanks, Rick. Okay.
Oh, that was great.
Good.
Such an inspiration every time.